Hello and a very warm welcome to everyone. I am Shrija Gurwal, and you are watching another episode of Private Eye Special Podcast. Of course, today the conversation will talk a little about the DeepSeek phenomenon, but whilst much has already been spoken about it, my focus would be that where do we go from there? And it's becoming very, very important to talk about it because look at how the visionaries have labeled it. If you look at Mark Anderson, he actually called this week's release of the R1 chatbot from DeepSeek a Sputnik movement for AI. If you look at Mark Zuckerberg, he immediately convened four war rooms of meta engineers to catch up with DeepSeek's efficiency innovations. Not only that, you had US President Trump calling it a wake up call for the US technology industry, and all of it made for great news headlines. But for someone like me, I would say that one can't really discount markets, and you can never ever take them for granted. If markets have reacted this way, and what a sell off across tech equities globally, with $100 billion write off, there are countries whose GDP can tangibly move up and down with this kind of number. Markets never react so strongly just with one technology startup competing with the other. Markets have very long memory, and I do feel that somewhere what happened with NVIDIA chips reminded them of the Cisco moment of the dot-com bubble. What happened in the dot-com past? Cisco was the apple of the eye for hardware engineering, which actually made the internet such a strong phenomenon for everybody. But suddenly, when the dot-com bubble happened, it changed from an undersupply conversation to an oversupply conversation. It was so bad that they actually had to sell their inventory, and which is why perhaps there was some bit of realization from the markets that, okay, is this the Cisco movement for AI? Because I think what sort of market believes that what happened with Nvidia, which may now see less demand for its newer and more expensive GPUs. This could become a problem for the market generally because now you have an oversupply of GPUs in 2025, which may play out much like the oversupply of networking equipment in 2000, 2001. But one has to also remember that Cisco's bad news and orders actually became great news for companies like Facebook, Apple, Netflix, and Google, which actually emerged from the ashes of the dot com bubble. So, my question to this panel is that this was a mirror on the wall for us, what these Chinese kids sort of showed us a banger of a product. But are we going to see an AI 2.0 or a different version of AI startups come in? I would like to sort of begin with you, Bruce. How have you seen this phenomenon? Because this can't really be seen and just ignored. This actually could usher in a new wave of AI startups.
So thank you. It's a lot to unpick in that. So let me pick a couple of headlines and then let's sort of see where we go. Break DeepSeek down. What they did really, really well is they solved some engineering problems. So forget all the kind of noise for a second. There were some key engineering problems. And the reason they solved those engineering problems is because they didn't have access to the chips. So it really was, necessity is the mother of invention. So the fact that the US were stopping chips going to China actually forced China to kind of rethink the problem and rethink how they approached it. And at the heart of it, it's some core smart engineering in terms of how they've done it. So I think at one level, it's not a completely new AI that's come up. It's a different way of doing it. So for me, I actually thought NVIDIA was oversold. I think that fundamentally there's still an awful lot of demand for those GPUs out there. So I think the NVIDIA piece going forward is still a good play to be. I think the ones that the tech bros, to use that awful expression, on the West Coast, who've been buying up all the chips, they're the ones that look a bit silly here because a lot of their valuations are based on the fact that they'd created that beachhead and that they had this they had all of the chip capacity and therefore no one else was going to get in the market. I think they're the ones who got a little bit left with kind of emperor's new clothes more than Nvidia did. So that for me would be the kind of my kind of start point. Kind of love to dive into kind of the engineering and how that kind of works, but I actually added to my Nvidia holding when everything went down. I didn't add to any holdings I've got in any other tech stocks. So that could be foolish. You might look back and laugh at me in 6, 12, 18, 24 months time, but that's kind of where I was at. And just for context, I was in the VC and private equity world back in the 90s. So, I do have the scars on my back from, the dot-com crash and what happened. I do think this is different. I think this is a blip on the road. I think there's a long, long way to go. I think we'll look back in a few years' time, and this will seem like such a small part of the journey. Because I think there's so much more to go yet.
Okay. What about you, Narendra? Bruce is like that this is different. We will look back in retrospect and say this was just like very, very small. And the AI journey is much, much longer than this. How do you look at this phenomenon?
See, when markets react, there's two parts. One is markets react to bad news, right? Something went bad, somebody didn't deliver, somebody didn't promise very well, somebody didn't deliver very well, and markets react. If you see what happened, like Bruce said, some people figured out an efficient way to get things done. Right? I mean, in extremely plain, simple English, they figured out an extremely efficient way to get things done. They got things done. Is it perfect? Is it exactly the way they called it out? Is it exactly the cost at which they called it out? It's a nuance which can be worked out. But more importantly, the markets are reacting because this technology has now started to getting mainstream. It is in some ways what you would call the consumerization of the internet. Internet, way back, right? Bruce and I have seen a few industry cycles, I think. Internet was a technology which was used by enterprises and universities to exchange information and do transactions. With the browser and other things coming in, it became a consumer product, right? PCs were used to exchange information and stuff. When the PCs started hitting home, it became a consumer product. AI has been in the universities and a little bit in our hands. I mean, even today, most users of Gemini or Perplexity or even ChatGPT are doing things which are relatively simple. What you're going to see is an explosion. This is going to be a thermonuclear reaction explosion in terms of usage, in terms of ideas, in terms of things you could potentially do with core LLM and maybe some other acronym in the future technology. In my opinion, this market reaction is largely centered around a company or two which were valued at a certain point or thought to be invincible in terms of getting things done. Some people said, well, we can try and do it more efficiently. So that value may have gotten split and the valuations may have come down for a particular company or two, and some other people in the future may be getting more value. This is not in my opinion, this is not a market meltdown like what you were thinking in the dot-com crash. This is a company or two and a few others getting revalued with the thought that there may be others who need to get more value. The belief in the technology, the belief in the model, the belief in the fact that this is going to grow, I don't think has diminished a single bit. The belief that this is going to become a mainstream consumer and enterprise product is as strong as it can be. And in my opinion, it has now strengthened that this technology can go mainstream faster, cheaper, and maybe even better.
I think you said faster, cheaper, and better. Let's talk about the cheaper aspect first, because that had played out very majorly in the minds of the market players. Because what really has been labeled, because let's face it, I think the sadist in us was very happy that it, after a very long time, there was something which could challenge OpenAI. Because Sam Altman, we all like to hate him, right? Because he's been such a marketeer. He came to India and actually had the guts and the audacity to say it's hopeless to compete with us. So all of us were rejoicing and very happy. Look what these Chinese kids have done at like what fraction of a cost on what you did. So it made the sadists in us very happy. But the reality is that perhaps what they have built is that what the big tech of AI is. Can we now say that OpenAI has built the big tech of AI? And upon that, new models will be built. Because there's also an allegation, insinuation maybe, that DeepSeek was also built on their model. So maybe whatever will be built going forward will have some remnants of OpenAI. Is it fair to assume that?
Well, we dive into the answer. There is an irony, isn't there? That, OpenAI are complaining that someone's copying them when actually we've ignored the fact that OpenAI treat everyone else's copyright as non-existent. So, I've got to sort of step back from that for a second and say, that's what you do when your position's challenged. I actually think they're different. I think if you want to compare ChatGPT, you want to compare O3 to R1, they're actually they're different and they do different things. If you're wanting to do something, if you think of ChatGPT is really good if you're giving it instructions on what you want it to do. Whereas if you look at DeepSeek, it's much more of a kind of fluid thinker. And it's quite different in the way they operate. It's quite different results you get out if you ask them both the same question. If you ask them different prompts, you can get the same result. But if you ask them the same prompts, you might often end up with something quite different. So I don't know that they're a direct comparison with one another. I think, if I think about, right now I'm not using DeepSeek personally, but some of my labs team are. But I use ChatGPT for some things. I use Gemini for some things. It depends on what it is. So I think, you use different models, different AI for kind of different purposes. So I think there's space for everyone in there. I do agree that those statements he made, I can't remember if it was Delhi or Mumbai he was in, are going to come back and bite it. And there we go. If you're going to make statements like that, then these sort of things are going to happen. So I think that's not a bad thing. And actually, if you look at the budget on Saturday, look at the amount of money that's been set aside, even just in the kind of fund of funds piece, Center of Excellence. If you then take that amount of money and say, right, it was 10 million bucks to create DeepSeek, right? How many DeepSeeks can we make? We can make between 2,000 and 4,000. That's the kind of quantum of kind of what's there. So there's the ability for smart engineers to get together and do something special has been proven kind of beyond doubt. The fact that you don't have to build it on the same core is great. So I think there's kind of lots of good things to come out of this. I know I've kind of completely ducked your question, but I do think actually that they're different. I think DeepSeek is different from OpenAI or ChatGPT.
Okay. Narendra, in terms of the cheapness quotient of it, and you said that will be faster, cheaper, and better AI models coming in. So when the DeepSeek phenomenon happened, what was the internal conversation like you with your team? Has the investing lens changed since then in terms of what kind of business models you would want to look at now?
We make investments in India, mostly companies based out of India. Most of the pitches which come to us are largely using a certain capability within the AI spectrum to go after a particular use case. We haven't so far looked at a good, generic AI company, right? Very honestly. So from our perspective, now the conversation is If it's going to get cheaper, if it's going to get better and cheaper, then any SaaS company, let's say, coming to us, making a business process automated, making more efficient business processes for a company, should definitely have a strong AI component. And that AI component doesn't mean it has a voice activated chatbot, giving you answers and stuff like that, right? It has to have ingenuous use of AI where it actually helps the enterprise. Now, AI for the sake of it ain't going to help anybody, right? It has to be very clear. How does it make an enterprise more efficient? How does it make an enterprise more compliant? How does it make an enterprise or business get more business? I mean, ultimately, you've seen enough finance balance sheets and stuff like that. You could be selling airplane tickets, you could be selling chips, you could be selling potato chips. It's the balance sheet that's going to matter, right? I mean, it's the amount of money we return to the investors that's going to matter, right? Nothing else is going to matter over time in these enterprises. And if you can bring tech which improves their balance sheet, either cost of operations or helps them grow, that's what's going to matter. So, to your question, we would look at SaaS companies, tech companies, enterprise B2B type companies more carefully. I mean, we had a guy pitching us security software a few days ago, and we were like, okay, this is good. You've got a bunch of signatures you're looking for, and then you do something else. Like, so where is your use of AI to be able to predict security issues? Because you now have patterns. Where is your use of AI to be able to predict, even at 50% accuracy, potential bad actors or scenarios, right? Those are the kind of things we would want startups to come and talk to us about, which is, I've got tech which takes care of the business process. I've got tech which protects you. Awesome. 20 other kids can do that potentially. But if you come and tell me, well, I've got all the stuff, and then I throw in the heuristics, I throw in these models, I throw in some specialized data and RAGs and stuff to train this, and then maybe some continuous thought process type methodology which DeepSeek is using into this to be able to predict things, to be able to maybe even stop things, to be able to even analyze things at a different plane. That would be fun.
So, Narendra and Bruce, what is like the future of the investing in AI conversation? So, it's a horizontal technology. I also see a lot of AI washing happening, both on the part of investors and entrepreneurs. So now every entrepreneur is starting a company or if they have a company, they're putting a .ai against it just to market and position yourself as an AI company. That is one. Second, I'm seeing a mushrooming of VC funds happening, saying that we are now AI focused funds because perhaps that is music to the ears of their LPs, right? Because this is like a hot thing right now. So how does one look through the AI washing and really be confident that the business model that one is bringing to the table is robust, sustainable, and building for the long term?
Let me see if I can jump on that. Sorry, Bruce. Picture an opposite scenario, which is all this is going on, and then there aren't enough VCs or investors calling themselves tech investors or deep tech investors. And there aren't enough companies, washing themselves and calling them .ai or even attempting. I'm a foolish optimist. I look at these things in a slightly different perspective, which is great. There's lots of people who want to be in this conversation. There are some people who really create this conversation rather than just want to be in the conversation. And there are going to be people thinking, what should the conversation be in the future? And predict that and prepare for that. The role of investors, and some of us who've been in the tech industry and tech investors will be to figure out which ones deserve patient capital, which ones deserve risk capital. There could be many folks who are creating very good businesses, right? They may be doing the whitewashing or the AI washing of things. They could potentially be great businesses. Are they patient capital worth in businesses? That's for the investors to figure out. Sorry, Bruce.
Look, you're at the center of this, so better qualified than I to answer that. If I were to step back for a second, I think there's a couple of things that kind of spring for me. One is, when we talk about SaaS, we mean software as a service, but actually we're also going to be talking about SaaS soon, which is service as a software, and that's where we go from horizontal to vertical. So, too often AI has been there, but the ability to monetize it and do something with it hasn't been there. So you've got to focus on what the actual service is that you're delivering and how you're going to monetize that. And AI has to be kind of part of the journey to do that. So if I think about what we do, we use AI to make kind of portfolio construction, portfolio management decisions, and it's running just now about 30 different portfolios. Now, just as we've therefore brought the cost of portfolio management right down. So my ability to add more and do more with that means, so I don't charge for my AI, I charge for my recommendations or for my portfolios. So you've got to have a business model where you're charging for what that thing is. And if you can get that right, and then I think we've got to see lots and lots of vertical plays. Because if everyone tries to be horizontal, there's not enough space for that. I think you've got to go vertical, and you've got to go deep, which means you've got to really understand the sector you're in, rather than be kind of very AI focused for the sake of being AI focused. So I think I kind of agree, but from a different angle on the same telescope.
So you should not be AI just for the sake of AI. So Narendra, I would like to understand from you and Bruce that what is the ideal product market fit for an AI startup? How does that look like? How does one distinguish between a good AI company and a not so good AI company?
Can I have the first? Sorry, the perfect product market fit is when you don't even think or care about whether it's AI, right? You're getting the product, whatever the product is, whether it's recommendations on Netflix, or whether it's Google Maps telling you kind of where to go and what the weather's going to be and everything. There's kind of AI built into everything, all out how all of that works, how all the handoffs work, that actually you get given the useful bit of information, whether that's with us on the kind of portfolio side or whatever it happens to be, that you don't even think about it. For me, you shouldn't see it.
Absolutely. I think I go back to the point about, we talked about enterprise and how things which impact balance sheets, right? Now, things which impact consumers. So the ideal product market fit is going to be two parts. How does it impact a consumer's life, right? Let's take, for example, somebody is wearing a fancy watch which records a whole bunch of your body sensors. You enter a bunch of stuff, and then your phone takes pictures of things which you eat and stuff like that, and then you enter your medical records and stuff. I mean, if somebody was building a sort of wellness product, it would sense how many times I scream in a day, what kind of food I eat, what time do I sleep, how much walking am I doing, how my body condition, sort of sensors, parameters are, and be able to advise me what I should do so I don't get into trouble. As an example, right? I really don't care if it uses AI or not. For the sake of it, it should get that job done. It should be able to tell me with reasonable accuracy that this is what I need to do, as an example, benefiting consumers. If I'm traveling in a foreign country, and if it's doing a fantastic job of guiding my itinerary, knowing my preferences, helping me, move around faster, helping me be safe, advising me on my travel, just managing my day for me and thinking ahead in terms of where I'm going to be based on my calendar. I'd use that AI, whether it's AI or not, I don't know, but I need that piece of technology which is going to help me make my day more productive, as an example. You shift to businesses. If I'm able to, as a business, reach out to customers more intelligently, help them close transactions safely, understand whether the product which we supplied is meeting their requirements, and being able to go back to them with potentially the next product is the business cycle. Hundreds of scenarios of potentially AI usage within one. But if it's invincible, love it. It should get the job done. And then, of course, impact the bottom line and bring customer satisfaction.
So basically, the point that I'm understanding, and correct me if I'm not wrong, the key takeaway is that you've got to build a solid product. But perhaps there's an inherent assumption now that you can't build it without using AI. Is that what it is right now? That the way internet was horizontal technology, just impossible post O25 and post OpenAI. That if you were to build a solid, formidable internet business or digital business or tech business, it needs to have AI. Is that
every business will need AI in it. If they are not using it, they will most likely cease to be businesses.
I look at my own business. So we AI is at the core of what we do. But if I just look at, forget that bit for a second, which is the most important value generative piece. If I look at just how my team operates, more than 10%, it's getting close now to 20% of our code is written by AI. So actually we're using AI to write code. Now it's not writing all the kind of the really funky new bits of code, but it's actually when there's a change in libraries, it's doing a lot of that. It's doing a lot of the checking. It's doing a lot of the peer analysis. So we're up at about 20%. We think we can get north of 50% in the amount of code that our AI is writing. We reckon it'll probably cap out about 70%, maybe 75%. That means I can grow my top line, or I can grow my research and tech development capacity 4x this year without increasing headcount, right? So now it's up to us to think of the things that we can kind of do with that. I've got staff appraisal, we're coming up for year end. I've got staff appraisals coming up. We've got a section in the staff appraisal this year, which is kind of outside of, again, the core product. How have you used AI? Now, we're not going to mark people up or down on that, but I want everyone, I don't care whether you are, an assistant, you're a coder, you're a person on the R&D side, you're on the sales side, everyone should be using it as part of their day. And I want to kind of encourage more of that, because I think enterprises, organizations generally, we're not using it to the capacity we could. We're really not.
Thanks for that. But Narendra and Bruce, I have a question for you. We have seen this playing out in various phases. And VCs are also great storytellers, and they have to be, right? Because they keep thinking of new avenues where to invest. When Flipkart was there, e-commerce was the thing. Then came crypto, then came metaverse, and now it is artificial intelligence. So nobody even talks about metaverse. You doesn't really even know where the metaverse boom actually went. In fact, Facebook renamed itself to Meta. So my thinking is that what is it to say that AI is such a multi-generational opportunity? Why is it that we are seeing with AI everybody from all corners of the world, tech enthusiasts, tech visionaries, people actually saying that this is it, this is here to stay, warning about the dangers of AI, as if a new animal has been unleashed, but this is here to stay? What is it to say that this was not another fad as the previous ones? What is giving us so much conviction about AI this time?
Need versus, optional tech, right? If I'm able to browse through pictures of how my cousins did at the weekend, it's nice, it's good fun, but probably not a need for me, right? Where AI is impacting me and almost everybody whom you mentioned and the citizens of countries and mass population is it's impacting their livelihood more than their lifestyle. Many of the things in the past which you mentioned were very lifestyle oriented things, right? For me to be able to be in this fancy metaverse. Now, the metaverse, depending on which view you look at it, transformed itself into thousands and thousands of home-based businesses being able to sell their products on Insta or Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever social medium which you're using, it created enterprises across the globe. I was sitting with some folks last night, and we were chatting about, hey, where did you get this snack? Oh, I got it on Instagram. I have no idea where this company is. Looked good. We ordered it, and then we ordered it again. And then when you think about it, thousands and thousands of businesses got created in this sort of meta environment, if you will. It moved from being a lifestyle thing to a livelihood thing, right? So wherever it's going to impact my livelihood, it is not going to be a fad. It is not going to be also ran. It's going to be mainstream, and it's I go back to my faster, cheaper, better, right? And in that order, especially, it's going to make me it's going to make Bruce's engineers write more code. It's going to make him and many other companies to be able to experiment with more models potentially, more kind of customers potentially, expand their business into segments which they probably had not anticipated they would, right? So it is getting into people's livelihood, and hence my thesis is that this is here to stay. It's going to grow. It's going to grow exponentially. The Jevons paradox, which we sort of talked about in the past, and now it's suddenly become mainstream topic where everybody is reading about it and trying to understand it. It's going to play out much faster and bigger than we can imagine.
I agree with all of that. Obviously, got a vested interest in AI generally, but I think as well, AI's been around for decades, right? I remember coding expert systems back in the late 80s, early 90s, which was a kind of early variant of it. You go to the early 2000s, and the AI that was around then was all symbolic. So it was all rules based. So you coded rules, and the machine ran on lots of rules, and neural nets was just sort of starting to kind of come in at that time. And in neural nets, you don't code the rules. You tell it the outputs you want, and you let it, like the human brain, make its own connections to get there. The price of compute's come down so much in the last few decades that suddenly that already is all around us. So I don't think that, so AI is in the kind of consciousness just now, but we've all been asking Alexa or Siri or whatever for quite a long time, unless you've got a Scottish accent, in which case Siri just doesn't understand you. So ignoring that kind of little niche of 5 million of us, that aside, we've all been kind of using AI in different ways. As I say, Netflix generally has a pretty good idea of what you're going to like. That's just very simple AI that's sitting behind it. So I think AI already is everywhere. I think what ChatGPT did is suddenly brought it into the mainstream that people could kind of use it, and from that we've sort of seen the bubble growing a bit from that. Are valuations right? I don't know. We'll look back in 10 or 20 years and we'll know if the valuations were right. Is AI going to be part of our lives going forward? Absolutely. And all the other sectors you mentioned there, AI is sitting in all of them. And it's easy to envisage a smart fridge which ties up with your calendar, which knows what you like and who you've got coming for dinner, which reorders via e-commerce or Blinkit or wherever you gonna get your groceries from, and has stuff kind of delivered to it's really easy to see how all of that connects. I suspect that it's the bits we haven't thought about yet, and the uses we haven't thought about yet. Those are the ones that are going to be those ones we can think about are the easy ones. They're the easy wins. It's kind of the ones beyond that we haven't seen. And again, I honestly believe we're going to look back in 5 or 10 years, and we're going to say, we thought it could be that. It's so much more than that.
You talked about scenarios. Are we creating an animal? I could anticipate somebody just saying, unleashing a model on looking at all the traffic violations, tax violations, property violations, and whatever else has been happening in the country because everything is going digital, and the machine proposing laws, right? Rather than humans writing up laws. I don't see that day as being too far, where you could basically start to govern society uh, digitally and propose the governance of society, because it's easy to model our behavior because of the amount of computed models available, and then propose things. Now, you could make this as a bad thing, which is, oh my God, the machine's controlling the humans. Or you could make productive use of it and understand where we are likely as humans to falter and put guardrails around us. Right? I mean, and this is to the point that we don't even know where this is going to get used yet. Right? None of us had imagined that we're going to speak into a machine and get a beautiful greeting card image for customized for a person, right? I mean, it was bizarre. If I had told that to you even maybe a year ago, like, okay, thank you, but let's talk money. Now that is money. That conversation is impacting a whole generation of media industry. I don't see a scenario too far where I could say, okay, model X, Y, Z, whatever, write up the new Ramayana and write up, I want 100 episodes of Ramayana, right? Create characters, just create storylines, I mean, the next soap opera. Just don't bother me. Just write up 100 episodes, maybe even create characters visually, add elements of whatever drama I want, and then go do the stuff. And if the computer's right, maybe even generate the images. And if the cost is right, maybe go generate the movie.
But so I think my submission to all of this, especially when it comes to the creative element of AI impacting the media industry, is that, I mean, you get what you deserve, right? Ultimately, AI is going to be such a horizontal technology and so cheap and so abundantly available that will be commoditized.
Mhm.
Right? So, are we ready for a very commoditized Netflix? I mean, are we really saying that Black Mirror will be written by an AI? Somebody actually asked him the question, and he said that I would rather die the day that happens than actually do that. So I think this argument of human intuition and AI, I think we can have hundreds of episodes in that. It's a long-standing conversation. And I also do feel that a country like ours, which has a very different socioeconomic demographic, I mean, when the entire conversation of OpenAI sort of started gathering steam, there were questions of universal basic income being sort of coming into this country, right? I mean, we're talking about jobs displacement. Often we have the habit of thinking about tier one India or people relegated to rich offices and that kind of per capita income. But AI will have an impact and a deep impact on livelihood, job displacement, a lot of things will happen. So now I want to put both of you on a hot seat. Usually you see startups pitching to you. Now let's do a reverse pitch. I want you to give me two startup ideas which you have not heard in the AI space till now, which you would have liked to hear from people. So I'll start with you, Narendra, and then get on to you, Bruce.
That's
I
so
think I
unfair.
gave you. I
He
think I gave
sees,
you one
he
already.
sees the startups. I don't see any, so I think that's really unfair question. There you go. No pressure.
I think I gave you one already, or maybe I even gave you two, right? I mean, I haven't seen anybody come and tell me how I'm going to rewrite laws, how I'm going to rewrite governance, how am I going to rewrite social behavior, not in a manner where it controls, but in a manner which helps govern, right? Improves. Again, I go back to, if it's not improving productivity, if it's not improving profits, if it's not improving operations compliance, if it's not making the planet greener, it's unlikely it's going to get funded, right? It's really as simple as that. So I gave you examples in media, I gave you examples in law, I gave you examples in security. I'd love to hear a security pitch which is able to, I mean, to your point about the middle India, right, or the Bharat as people refer to it, right? It would be fun if a farmer just took a phone, walked around his field for an hour, and went back home and shot around things. And from that 10, 15, 20-minute video, we're able to construct back everything he or she needs to do for the next 4 to 6 months to get a good crop, stay healthy, figure out prices for his produce, figure out a plan for his family in terms of education, figure out a mechanism for him or her to sign up to the appropriate government schemes, make sure the health of the family is taken care of based on the hygiene. I mean, I just want a 15-minute video input. And I don't think it's very difficult for me to be able to give back all that value to that farmer, the 200-300 million odd people toiling away in the inner India, and make their life more valuable, meaningful, productive. Love to hear that idea.
So it's interesting because I was coming at that from a slightly different perspective, but I agree. If I think what DPI has done for India generally, and the kind of the India stack and mobile phone adoption and UPI adoption and that whole kind of piece, so I know that's we've been able to kind of drive people into having kind of bank accounts, but again, your subsidy is just, the application for your subsidy is just done. But not only that, actually, because it knows everything that's going on around the country, so, farmers A, B, and C are told actually you'd be better off sowing a different crop this year. A, of weather predictions, or B, because we know everyone else is growing that same one, so it's going to impact your pricing. So at a country agri level, can you imagine the kind of the kind of planning then that could come down to a kind of very individual piece and kind of make that life completely different, take some of the risk out of it and kind of change it? I think it would be really easy to do, and you can literally do it with your mobile phone. You don't need.
Here's one more, right? Every child should have AI tutor, which is going to govern all subjects, which is going to be able to customize the lessons, which is going to customize help. The only thing that the AI may not be able to teach the child is social behavior or good social behavior, or just having fun, throwing rocks at each other, breaking each other's bones, and still being friends. That may be hard to teach, right? But every other skill, every other educational capability which needed to be taught, a machine can do customized for me, so that I am not an underprivileged educated child, because the sophistication, the education which any economically strong student got, I should be able to get as an underprivileged kid. There is no privilege. It just democratizes education and learning, right? And that tool, that AI engine at the back end, should be able to teach me everything in a manner which my brain is likely to absorb and get me ready for the world. That's a use case I'd love to see, so that we don't have to spend thousands and thousands of crores on schools and infrastructure and teachers. And this doesn't mean you replace teachers, mind you, right? We're not replacing teachers. We're helping the child get smarter for the world. It's still so much fun to be able to go out in the field and play an evening of cricket or kites or soccer or whatever, but it takes care of my learning and readiness efficiently, right? That's a use case we'd love to see.
Okay, another question I have for both of you, within the end of the conversation. Common mistakes which founders should avoid as they are building AI businesses, something which they have learned the hard way. And I would like to also understand from you, Bruce and Narendra. So there's a Zomato, there's a Swiggy, there's a Zepto, there are these large businesses being built. So will we see an AI only company becoming these big? Or will we see these companies becoming bigger on back of using AI?
Both.
So, kind of mistakes to avoid. I think the biggest mistake to avoid is assuming that what you've got is unique, right? You should always. So, this is my this is my second startup, kind of both out of India. And you've always got to assume that you're not unique. You've always got to assume that you're in second place. Because if you're assuming you're in second place, you work as hard as possible to get yourself into first place. The minute you think you're in first place, then you take your foot off the gas and it comes back. And I think the thing in it, with AI, there's so much changing so quickly. You think, oh, I've got something that's unique, but actually, why is it unique? And invariably, it is not necessarily the AI. It is the application of AI. It is the market. It's how you monetize it. There's a whole, it's the data set that you own off the back of it. Whatever it happens to be, it's quite often not the thing you thought of when you first started. So to anyone who's starting a business, and as I say, this is my second one, but anyone who's starting a business, you've got to be really clear on what makes you different. And I can almost guarantee it's probably not the AI. It might be how you use it. It might be how you, it might be your data set, whatever it is. Just try and get your head around that and don't fall into the trap of saying we're unique, because I think the other thing, if you think you have no competitors, then you probably don't have a product market fit. So that's the other mistake that I see entrepreneurs generally, not AI specifically, but generally. We're unique. No one does what we do. Well, there's a reason for that. No one wants to buy it. So I think there's a kind of product market fit piece as well. So those are the two things that I would say always kind of watch out for.
The most bizarre AI pitch that both of you might have come across.
So look, I don't get AI pitches because we're an AI company, so I don't kind of see it. So I think Narendra, you're the one. I can remember some really bad ones back in the .com boom.
Fortunately, by the time things get to us, they get filtered. So I'm not sure the bizarre ones even make it to us.
You were like stuck in an elevator with Sam Altman. How will the conversation look like, especially post the DeepSeek debacle? Like 2 minutes dispatch to Sam. What would that?
What are you going to do?
You can take it up.
Okay. So firstly, I'd have a chuckle, because you have to, don't you? There's a bit of Schadenfreude in there, and that you thought you were too big, and actually you've been kind of brought down to size. So I think you can't ignore that. I think equally, I said this already. If I look at O3, if I look at ChatGPT versus kind of DeepSeek R1, they are different, and they do different things. So actually, the opportunity for him, he's got something that can work with complex problems in kind of discrete steps, whereas kind of DeepSeek is much more of a kind of streaming, consciousness piece. I think there's quite a lot of learning for him in there in terms of kind of how he uses that. I suspect he's re-engineering lots of bits of his process just now, and he's going to make himself much more efficient kind of off the back of it. So I suspect he's not kind of worried to the extent that the media think he's necessarily worried. So I suspect he's kind of firing on that. But I don't think he'll be back in India. I think he's back. Is he back this week, next week? I don't think he'll be back saying the same thing again.
We hope so. What about you, Narendra? You just said, what will you do?
I would just ask him, so how are you going to make the next 100 billion with your partnership with Microsoft? I honestly believe the things which they can potentially do together really can impact enterprises, right? I mean, there are trinkets we can do with asking interesting questions and philosophy questions and trying to prove A is better than B or B is better than A, etc. But I go back to the core, which is who's going to pay you? How are you going to pay for all this stuff, right? Enterprises are most likely going to pay you. And enterprises are going to take that technology to consumer and they eventually get paid. So the only interest I would have is, Sam, what's the partnership with Microsoft? How does that go and take you to 100 billion revenue? What elements, as an investor, I'd love to look at, what else should I invest in? That's probably my only interest. deep seek, deep whatever, fine, keep building that stuff. Show me how you're going to make 100 billion, helping enterprises.
I don't think he has entertained those questions from investors yet. But all said and done, I think he's the best marketing guy whom I have seen the last decade for sure. It is impossible for a tech company to raise this quantum of funding at this speed. At least I haven't seen this. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sort of really joining in this incredible conversation. I will again get both of you on a podcast. We will go deep into AI product making, talking about pricing, competitive advantage, building moats, and so on. Today's conversation was more from investor's lens. We'll do another one from a builder's lens. Thank you so much, Narendra and Bruce, for joining it. The time I see you next, goodbye and good luck. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.